Hi, my name is Turkan Aksoy. I'm a cultural inclusion specialist working in the Canterbury Bankstown area, and I've had the privilege of working with these amazing distinguished guests who are with us today. I'd like to introduce you to Aunty Noelene Holton and also Aunty Lyn Martin. And before we start, I'm just going to pass over the mic to Aunty Lyn to give us a welcome to country.
Badyara Birunga, good evening. Waramai Ninga Laru Naga Balawi Gandara Guru. Welcome to you all. I've just spoken to you in the language of the people of this area of Australia, which is Darug. I would like to pay my respects to our ancestors and all our elders for their keeping and passing on of the knowledge of our Dreamtime through song, dances and art. In June, we had our NAIDOC, which is a celebration for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But unfortunately, due to what's happening within the world today, we were unable to gather and celebrate and share our history and our culture. But everyone has attempted to acknowledge this fact in very new and inventive ways. We have a theme every year, and this year it is always was and always will be. What does this mean? Well, they're referring to country. But when we, First Nation people, talk about country, traditional country, we mean something beyond the dictionary word of the definition. For us, we might mean more than just a place on the map. To us, country could mean the values, places, resources, stories, or cultural obligations associated with any area and its features. And it describes the entirety of our ancestral domains. While they may no longer reside there, even taken away losing their language, their stories, the First Nations people still yearn for their country. This land was cared for, gave us all that it was required for over 65,000 years. Hopefully now, 250 years on, the white people will start to listen and understand our Dreamtime, which tells of how to survive on the arid and beautiful land. It is important to have genuine Indigenous-led embedding of our culture. This is vital for all and for culture not to be lost. With the lessons of our ancestors reaching from the past informing our shared future. So I ask for your help in walking in the footsteps of our ancestors, honouring their journey, respecting their struggles, all the while creating our own, remembering all we do and how we act to help teach the next generation to come. This land always was, is and always will be Aboriginal land. Waramai, Didjara, Yana, Janwali, Bulawu, Nungani. Welcome to our land, Aboriginal land. Thank you for walking with me and sharing my dreaming.
Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome, Auntie. Much appreciated. And I'd also like to pay my respects to in your presence and thank you for being here with us today. Today we're going to be talking about our songlines, footsteps to strong engagement and what that might look like. But because our audience is quite diverse right now and they're all over the country, I'd like to get a bit of an idea about how you might want to define what songlines is. So I might go to you first, Auntie, if you can possibly share what songlines mean to you and your continuing storytelling.
Well, songlines is basically the story of our history and our culture, and it trapes us. We walked the land and we told the story of the land. And this gives us our songlines.
Thank you very much. Aunty Noelene, can I possibly get your perspective of songlines as well? And then we might be able to talk about a project that we both worked on together.
That's not a problem. My name's Aunty Lyn Aunty I come from the tribe of the Gumbaynggirr Dunghutti, north coast of New South Wales. I was born, brought up by my old people from where I come from, being taught as a child and showing and telling. Songlines to me is very sacred, very special. It comes from the stories in the time when they were dancers, the dancers. Our stories come from the universe. Each season brings a story to us in some ways and different. We are of tribes, all different tribes, but very similar. And I believe song and dance is very special and sacred. And we've carried it for 40-something years, our history in this country. I believe, has been blessed from so much and so many people I work with. We always believe in peace and harmony in each country, wherever, and especially our country, because we are a country of so many nations, so many different people. And I haven't got a problem with that. I like meeting people because I teach my culture. And I believe in sharing it.
Thank you very much, Auntie. So back in 2016, the National NAIDOC Committee had Songlines as part of their theme. So each year, Australia celebrates NAIDOC Week, and each year there's a specific theme that they address. And in 2016, Songlines was what was stated as that year's theme. For someone who's worked in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities for over 10 years, this was the first time that I had heard about it. The fact that this is not something that's educated throughout our Australian education system, it's not really talked about in the wider community. And as those celebrations happened, I wanted to bring more of awareness to the diverse communities that we all work with. So we had a project known as Our Songlines, and you led that project, Auntie, so thank you very much for being participant and a lead on that project. And what we did was we brought you in and we connected to various different participants of our community. We worked with our neighbourhood centres, community representatives of diverse communities within the Canterbury-Bankstown area, and we all got together and you shared your Songlines story. Can you share with our audience what you shared with those participants on that day?
I remember that day was very special, especially to me, meeting different people. And explaining it is a hard thing. Sometimes it brings back memory for me where I really come from. I don't come from an house, I come from a tin house in the bush. So I was brought up with no electricity, nothing. But my story, I believe, passing it on. Sometimes there's, like it can break your heart, bringing memories back. And knowing like today, this, what we got now happening is separating so many of us and so many of my people. I've lost people while this is happening, and I could not go back where I come from. So I missed out on a lot, but on where I do come from, it was called a mission in the days. They done dances. Our people, we wasn't allowed to watch because corroboree is not women. We're not allowed to look at it when no fellas dance. Women were supposed to be in the house, not outside. So when the women dance, we do our own privates. It's very sacred. And each dance, what our people do, it tells a story from their tribes of so many in different ways of dancing. Each one has a totem. One of our native animals is a totem of each tribe in our country. So it gets like to understand it. A lot of people don't, but I love sharing this. If I had one of my old fellows sitting here, I would have to get permission from him to speak. So I've been blessed and I've been given permission to speak and work in this country. Because my country is the same, but we have different spaces. And it is hard sometimes when you want to do something, but you've got to get that permission before you do it. Our hallways are very sacred. We have sacred places all over our country. And those sacred places, you feel it. You walk on it and you can feel that. Hello, I'm somewhere special. I know I've been to places and I've been through the experience. I had old fellas following me to protect me. And I believe in the same old ways, even today. Like I came here from up the coast and I had visitors, my old fellas came. So I'm protected wherever I go. I believe that from my old people.
When we had those discussions with that group, we came to an understanding that Songlines was such a complex way of communicating through land and through peoples as well. To think that you can navigate through different country, different cultures, different ways of living on land over vast spaces was very mind-boggling for me. Like, it was almost like thinking of having this Google resource where I can ask questions, get answers to, but didn't require me having digital software. It didn't require me having to dig copper and tin to produce these things. It was naturally put together. It was naturally shared. And there was so much respect and culture around it. So for someone who's non-Indigenous, this was a process and a way of communicating that I had never come across before in my entire life. And it was absolutely such an awakening. And I know that even those participants who were sitting into that space, who had backgrounds who are Arabic speaking, some were Chinese speaking, and they were able to go and connect to their own cultural heritage and also their own songlines from generation to generation that they had lost. And I remember you spoke a little bit about losing connectivity because you were on the mission and not being permitted to sing your songs or to dance your dances. What did that mean to you to break that lineage?
It meant a lot. Like, I'd have to go back to my old fellows and get the permission. And to bring it back, I still had to get the permission from here. I have family who were born on this land, but I don't leave. Like, I prefer for each one who tells stories to share it. And I've done that over all the years I've worked in Bankstown and community, getting it out there, understanding other people, different nationalities, in which I enjoyed. And they understood a few things that I've been showing them. I've been showing them things like, as women, like women were allowed to do. And they understood that. But it was sometimes I got stuck because of their ways of life. I done a banner with so many women from Greenacre, all different nationalities. They didn't understand when I said to them, can you do a totem? Because I'm an Aboriginal artist. And they didn't understand what the totem meant. So I said, what's the main food you have where you come from? So they done what they can, but what came out of it, the other idea I gave them, because I done the map of our country, our flag, they done all their flags. So they presented their stories by showing me all different flags, and it worked out so beautiful.
How did it make you feel when they were connecting to their own stories as you had connected with your own?
It made me so proud like understanding them and teaching them and showing them. They were really into it, and they didn't understand. But when they started doing their flag from where they come from, it worked out so beautiful. And I got to understand a bit, and they got to understand a bit from me and our country, which was good.
When we work with a lot of Aboriginal communities and cultures, we kind of look at this as almost like an old way. It's an old way of doing things, but yet you demonstrated when you were working with this particular group that your storytelling processes have a place for here and now. That was wonderful to see. Thank you for that. Aunty Lyn, you've been doing a lot of support with the 4E Sydney Hip Hop Festival for over a couple of years now. What's it like for you to see these major projects come together with an Aboriginal narrative to start it off?
Well, I'm really happy because, and this is one of the reasons that I came along with this festival. It's not my cup of tea, but I've been working in schools with students, and I am trying to embed culture to them because when they've been brought down and they're living in Sydney, Noelene is very lucky because she lived on the mission, she lived with the old people, she was brought up with all this, but there's a lot of us that haven't been, and we have to go looking for it. They were becoming very disenchanted, turning away, getting into trouble. And I realised that this was the sort of music and dance that was up and coming. And over the years, and it's, I can go back like 12 years ago was my first experience with it, with Mark Ross, Monk, and Darren. Shannon, right?
Yeah.
And I used to say, I'm going to put my earplugs in, but they were good for the kids.
Yeah.
And the kids were relating to it. And that's why I came into it, because I wanted to try and get more boys and girls involved in it because, again, even though it's hip-hop, these boys and some of the women too that are out there that do it, they're building a narrative again of our culture because that's what's coming through, right? And so it's a different type of songline. It's going a different way. But when I go in and I talk to them and we organise projects and various things in the school, there's always that embedding of the old culture as well. And so they're helping me, I help them.
Dobby, who happens to be an artist who's worked with the 4E Hip Hop Festival over several years and who is identified.
I'm sorry, who?
Dobby?
Dobby, yes.
He's released a song recently, I Can't Breathe, and he's capturing current stories that are impacting him directly in his own life and within his own community. What's it like for you as an elder to see up-and-coming, thriving artists go on and continue their storytelling lineage? What is that like for you?
Well, I'm really proud, right? I really am. I mean, sometimes when I see some of these artists that I knew as children, I see them on TV or Facebook. I know now how to do Facebook. Oh, well, great. I know them, I knew them. And so I am very proud. And I mean, obviously, the First Nations people always had this talent there. It just wasn't nurtured.
Yeah.
It can't just suddenly be this generation that's got it. It must have come from somewhere, And I just want to hope that they keep teaching the younger generation, because that's what it's all about. Everything I do is to teach the younger generation, and I would like to know that the people that I've shown, that I've spoken to, that I've explained things to, and Noelene has, that they're going to pass it on. It's always got to be passed on.
Aunty Noelene, with some of the projects that you have worked on within the Canterbury-Bankstown area specifically, you have worked with a lot of diverse communities. Is it a challenge for you to share some of the stories from your background when many have very little understanding of Aboriginal culture or the history?
Yes, it is. Because it's hard when you have to say it and you got to speak it and try to explain. We have so many sacred places, even in this whole area. I've come across and I've felt it and I've seen it. So doing it, and when I do my artwork with community, it comes in that story, because each animal that we paint, it has a meaning. We get them spiritually. We see them. We don't see them as they are. We see them in different ways. That's our old fella there. And he could be tall, he could be, I can't say that which animal because they're sacred, but we see them in each different form and colours, and we know when they're there, we are protected. If we're on sacred ground somewhere where we're not supposed to be, that old fella will come in a form. Like our Aunty Lyn she got her totem from up on the mountain. That's the eagle that flies. We've got the crow, or we've got, I'm allowed to say which bird we have. The carrawak. The carrawak is our messenger. When he comes and he sings, that's a message for us. We've got to go home, go back home to country. Yes.
So you see these messages because you identify them and you can recognise them. But many people in the community cannot see those messages. They don't know how to read those messages. What can Aboriginal communities do to support that learning to a wider Australian community?
Well, like I said, I don't need permission to talk about the birds, but each native animal I would have to, because there's a feeling of understanding. Hello, he's there, our fella. So we know this. And like I said, in the birds, but you get it also, each creature, what we have, there's always a way of knowing. Like we know when the rain's coming, and we know when how can I say it, when the fishes are coming. We know when to go fishing. We know when the rain's coming, and we know what's going to be on the ground. It's like we are connected to the universe. And the universe is a very spiritual thing, understanding our ways of life.
In the kind of work that we've done in community engagement, it's a very structured space. So we might identify a need, we might identify who those participants are, we might identify a time frame and what we want out of this engagement. But watching the two of you work within the community is quite mesmerising, because you both don't work off a formula. You read people like you read land, and you read the community's needs in a unique way. Where do you get that from?
Like I said, I come from very special people. Our fellas, they're our teachers. They taught us the way they were taught. And I believe we've got to carry that on so people can understand how special we are in each different ways. Like you can get someone from another country standing there, and then you're thinking, hello, I've got someone in front of me, how do I explain myself? Telling my story and where she's from, understanding her story. And that's the way I work with so many. In all the years I lived in Bankstown. I lived in Bankstown 41 years, coming from the bush. So it was like my culture, very strong, I believe in. And when I teach it, I like it, and I could feel it when they're there. Like where I'm sitting now, I could feel sitting here.
It's quite fascinating for me to watch. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Aunty Lyn, you do a lot of work with schools through the ACG, the Aboriginal Education Consultative Committee. With that group, you engage with children at very early stages. Why is it so important to engage with Aboriginal children, but also non-Aboriginal children as well, around Indigenous culture and understanding the way Aboriginal culture might impact their lives?
Well, originally, when the AECG started, that's over 35 years ago, Aboriginal students weren't treated the same way, right? They actually didn't even go as far in school, right? So they got together, this group, and they decided to form the ACG to try to address that fact. But today, we don't have that problem as much, and especially in our area, right? It's only in the last 3 years that we have had more than 10 students complete school and attain a high school certificate. But now they are almost all of them doing it, right? And so Bankstown has sort of changed their way a bit, and they're more into culture, right? And to give them culture, we do that through art, dance, music, right? Because that is how we've always told our culture, through these ways. That is our songline. And so we're just continuing it, but in a modern format, right? Language is becoming a very big thing, and on a excuse me, primary school level, I teach language, but there are others that can teach it at a high school level, but I am not a teacher, right?
You've been quite instrumental in running the Career Youth Forum over the several years now. Seeing some of these young kids come in quite shy, very disconnected, and in a 6-hour, sometimes even less than that, by the end of the day, they are so confident and so connected and so proud. How were you able to achieve this kind of engagement in such a short period of time?
Well, the point is that, again, within the city, our area, we don't have a lot of Aboriginal students in one given school. High schools have a bigger proportion, but primary schools, no. It's not like if you were to go out in the country and the school's got 400 Aboriginal students. Down here we don't. So they become very disconnected, right? And then you bring them into this Career Youth Forum and you start showing them, and it's like, how can I explain? It's really actually very hard to explain, because there is something within us that once we start to hear about our culture and our history, it connects inside, right? It's like, for instance, along the lines of, I actually was brought up here in the eastern suburbs in Sydney. My mother was taken away when she was 4 years of age, and it took her till she was 63 before she decided and came to me and said, I want to find my family. It took us a while, but it did, and it let us up to the Blue Mountains, right? When we got up there and we started to meet certain people, and we felt it, and it was just like I've come home. There's a connection, and I've spoken to a lot of people that have been brought up the same way, a lot of other Aboriginals, and there's this yearning. When we're kids, we don't really understand what that yearning is. It's not until you get older and you go home, and it's always you've got to go home. Although this is all Darug land, I'm a Darug woman, but the mountains is actually my home. I wasn't born there. I wasn't brought up there. Doesn't matter. It's home and it's inside. And so these kids come in and, I have some of them that say, it doesn't matter if I'm Aboriginal. What does it matter? But once they start to listen and they hear the different stories, and as I would say Songlines, because we do. We have various people come in and talk to them. Then they talk to others and they realise, oh, there's more Aboriginal kids out there. I didn't know this. And they just connect and they come together. Right?
Some of that connectivity was a little bit challenged last year. As you know, Christchurch happened in New Zealand and 51 people lost their lives because of a shooter who went to a mosque and basically rained terror over this community. That impacted Canterbury-Bankstown quite immensely. A lot of our community members were quite shaken up about this experience in a huge way. And this happened just before the 4E Festival happened in March. So when we wanted to bring the community back together and demonstrated resilience, it was you as our elders who came together. We did the smoking ceremony, and I could see just by you doing your welcome to country, the way the community that were watching you and seeing you stay so resilient and strong felt stronger for it. Those days when we were going through that festival was really challenging, and a lot of young people got impacted, but yet what you did and how you demonstrated that resilience was very powerful. What was that like for you to see the community come together after such a crisis?
It was actually pretty amazing. I mean, like Noelene, I've been in Greenacre, Bankstown, for over 40 years, and I've always lived with Muslims, right? And there are good, and there are bad, and there are some who think I'm mad, right? Over the years of the things I've done, but to me, they're people, right? I personally have never had any problems, so I don't see it. And to me, that what happened was, it was so horrendous. It doesn't matter whether this happened to Muslims, to Jews, to Aboriginals. It would be the same effect.
Yeah.
And in general, Bankstown, Canterbury is a pretty resilient, connected community. And I suppose I just wanted to do my bit to help it reconnect.
Yeah.
And I do find that Muslims are very the word, I can't think of the word, but they like Aboriginals. They want to know more.
They definitely identify.
They always want to know more. I mean,
Yeah.
as well as the schools, I do go to groups and I'm involved with the Muslim Women's Association, and I go and speak to women down there. And they're always wanting to know.
Yeah. There was a lot of recovery and time spent in supporting the community through all that. And obviously now we moved into a lot of bushfires and floods and now COVID. And yet Aboriginal community members are still engaged very thoroughly with our community, even during lockdown. I remember you going out and about making sure that elders were supported. I remember elders were connecting to each other and to the young people. It was just amazing to watch that level of engagement, not just in the good times, but in the challenging times as well.
I suppose if I could turn around and say, if I stop, I'll die. Right? But no, I worry about that's me personally, and I just worry about people, and I was just trying to connect with them to make sure they're okay, and because of this lockdown, a lot of the elders, we're going to have a hard time because they come to things, they come to functions, and we're going to have a hard time getting them to come back out again.
Yeah.
Right? We have a couple of groups that they used to attend and they're not starting up again, except for one, and apparently the answer at this stage is, oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right? They're frightened.
Yeah.
Maybe because I was a nurse, I'm not quite so frightened. Look, if I get it and I die, I die, you know. But, I mean, obviously, you take precautions, you take your normal precautions with what's going on. But, I mean, I'm not going to stay at home. But we are going to have a very, quite truthfully, you think you've had a really bad time up until now? We've got a really bad 12 to 18 months coming up.
Yeah.
Just trying to get people to interconnect.
Yeah.
But everyone stay home,
Stay safe.
please, for Eid.
Stay home and stay safe. Aunt, how are you finding the engagement right now? Is it more challenging for you to, because I know you do a lot of artwork and usually they're around you, they're with you, they're connecting to you directly. How does that look like for you right now?
I just finished an artwork that goes to Canterbury Hospital with a story. So what they've been doing is bringing the work to my home, and I do it in my home on my veranda. It feels safe, and I know they want to be safe, especially the hospitals and everyone else. So it keeps me occupied, and it's a good thing because at this time, when this is happening, we've got our own medicine. And I found I've known where my medicine are here in Greenacre, so I go and get that. And ever since it started, I've been in the house for 3 months working, and I finished so many projects and telling the story about, in the mission days, we had a dispensary. The dispensary was in a little old house, and it was like a medical centre. Government people, they sent out, and they gave us, I don't know if it was experimenting with us, but I remember all the medication, needles, tablets, medication. I could still taste the bitterness at this age. We were frightened, but they'd line us up and we had to be in line to go and get this done. We had our school on the mission. As we go to school, they used to check our bodies, our hair. Because my people, they got hair so thick, and the things they gave us, what we had to do. We never had hot water, we had boilers. So the old fellow would boil the boiler for our showers and our clothes. When we had to third class, they made sure a lot of our kids were clean before they went to school in town, because we lived in the bush 3 miles out of Kempsey. I was shoved in a convent, me and my sister. A lot of them were sent to public. I've never been in a public school. I know my prayers even today in the church. If I walk into a church, I know my prayers, I know my songs. I know the Bible. I believe it was forced on us, but believing it learnt me a lot. It taught me how to share and to help one another. I can't say that we were suffering because at that time I was only a small child. A lot of the children were taken off the mission who I grew up with. We were sent to Sydney on the whole Red Rattler mail train. Centrelink was called Social Security in the days. A group of us were sent to Sydney, hostels, with a letter to work in the factories in Sydney. We were only 15 and a half. Today I'm still working. That was for 2 bob, shilling, pences and threepence, just to make a couple of dollars. Wasn't dollars, just enough to buy a bag of lollies, just enough to go to a matinee. So my life story, and when I tell it, I get involved. And I like people to understand who we really are. I believe that's my job, and that's why I'm still doing it today.
You're always very brave in sharing your story, Aunt, whether it's with a group of people while you're doing your artwork or it's via streaming internationally. You're always brave, and thank you for that. Thank you for always being honest and sharing that. And your strength comes from your experience. You're an amazing leader within our community, an amazing respected elder, and we really appreciate what you do for us every day. So thank you.
I thank you, and I thank all you mob.
And same with you, Aunty Lyn. Thank you so much for your efforts in the community engagement that you offer to any project that you put your heart and efforts into. It's always very respected, and we only learn. We continue to learn because it doesn't have a format. It's like you were both saying, there's a lot of reading that you do because you have such intense experiences and you've got connection. So from my experiences, I just need to keep learning and keep implementing what I've learned. And I appreciate you sharing your stories and that storytelling lineage till whoever you encounter. So thank you today for sharing it with us and with our audience. And if there's any other questions, we're more than happy to answer those. But I don't see any questions coming through, so we might just finish up now if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again,
Thank you
Aunty.
very much.
Thank you.